Hello, I'm Adam Barralet, and today, thank you for joining me for another conversation about the gifts of Australian essential oils. Of course, I'm joined by Debbie Adderby again, and today, Debbie, we're going to be talking about one of my favourite essential oils, sandalwood.
Absolutely. And look, Adam, I always say to everyone says, what is your favorite essential oil? And there are millions of them, but sandalwood always comes up trumps for me. It's just one of those essential oils that I find really not only has that sweetness behind it, but it's such a beautiful calming oil. And it correlates with so many different things. It's just, and you wait until you hear what I've got to tell you today.
Yeah, I can't wait because it is honestly, I can't name my favourite oil, but rose,
Yep.
spruce, and
Mhm.
sandalwood are my favourite three. So it's in my top three. And I've had some great experiences actually. I've been in part of a reforestation project where we've actually been replanting Hawaiian sandalwood or
Oh,
Iliani.
yes. Yeah.
I've seen it being distilled here in Western Australia, but we're going to kind of zone in. There are many types and species of sandalwood,
There
but we're
are.
going to zone into the Australian sandalwood today.
Yeah, we are indeed. And so that's what we're going to talk about. And it's mainly that spicatum, even though we do have obviously our essential oil, the lancetum, which is grown over in Queensland in my way. It's actually the spicatum that I want to really share as much as I possibly can with you.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting tree because
Mm.
I know when I was doing this reforestation project in Hawaii, you can't just go planting if you're going to farm it sandalwood, 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 sandalwood. You had to
Yeah.
put other native trees around it. Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, correct. So they've got to have a host. Basically, the host is what attaches itself to the roots of the actual sandalwood itself. Now, things in Australia, like over where you live in WA, it's normally like the acacias or the wattles that will do that. And so what that does is it absorbs the shrubs absorb more nutrients and things to obtain a much healthier tree. And that's what they do. And some of these trees, if left to nature, of course, and not farmed, we're looking at easily to 250 to 300 years of lifespan. I mean, they are such an amazing plant. But the thing is with these trees, and mind you, I'm sorry about this, everybody, but I don't actually have as such the sandalwood tree with me like we did last time we spoke about the lemon myrtle, but I do have a piece of sandalwood. So I thought I would bring and show you this sandalwood. Absolutely beautiful. I've had it for many years, but absolutely give it a scratch, you know, and you actually can still smell that sandalwood in it. It's just dynamic. It really is. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful piece of wood as well. All the little knots and shapes and things in it. And also, I thought I'd show you that and pieces of paper here. It reminds me of going back to school, I suppose. That's not a bad place to be sometimes. This is really in WA, Adam, where you can actually, in that red area, this is where it really grows in abundance here. This is where you can really find it within the Western Australia area. And this is very arid. A lot of the areas that they grow in is extremely arid. And of course, as I said, they are very different also because these particular trees, not only do they gain that nutrients and that by their host, they actually also a little bit different to most of the natives. They actually will flower and fruit at a totally different time to everything else.
Hmm.
They're very unique. So they're strong. They live a long time as long as they get through the first couple of years after germination. They are very, very fragile at those first 2 years. You can lose them very quickly.
Mm,
Mhm.
mm. Now, has with the tree, obviously you've got that bit of wood there. We
Mm.
do get the oil. Is it just the heartwood, or can we actually get it from all the wood of the trunk?
Well, look, it can be taken from other parts of the trunk. That's not that it can't be. That then comes into quality.
Yeah.
Obviously the heartwood is going to be the most superior of all. And if you were to look, we've got the differences between it. So this one here is actually a farm. Can you see how they're in their rows where they're actually got the farming? So all of the sandalwood today that is used for oil is really most of it is taken from farming. So it's
Yeah.
not actually taken. There is a lot of restrictions with the government about taking the actual plants that are out in the native arid areas of WA.
And I guess the thing to consider, if we want to grow some more lemon myrtle or some lavender or whatever kind of thing, you stick some bushes in the ground. After a couple of years, hey presto, you've got your essential oil.
You
You're
have
not
got
getting you're not getting essential oil from sandalwood tree
mm,
for at least that. It's at least a 30-year investment, I believe.
something like that. Something like
So, going down and chopping down trees in the wild is a little bit more, it's going to be a problem. We see, there's some sustainability issues in other countries like India, but I love that we have moved to this sustainable farming model in Australia as well.
I'm
Um,
going to share a bit of that too, that sustainability.
yeah,
As we move on a little bit, when we get to our side of just chatting a little bit about the life and the history of sandalwood, you'll be quite surprised how much sandalwood actually left our shores in Australia.
yeah. Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about that now? Because I'm really intrigued to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say that our Indigenous, our First Nation people, it was a very prime part of the mobs that lived over in your area, and it was not necessarily just used for food. Which I've got this gorgeous picture here. You can see the actual sandalwood nut there. So
Mm.
they would use a lot of the nuts, not only just to work with their skin and keep their skin moist and things like that, and for its anti-inflammatory actions that it may have affected where they had bites or, insect bites. They used to use these nuts, very hard to crush, but they knew how to work with them. They used to take the bark off the tree. So I'm going to give you something here for actually talking about bush medicine here. So here, this would be stripping a little bit of bark for the bush for bush medicine. So these are looking at those right out in these more arid areas. And what would actually happen is they would remove the bark, not strip the bark so there was only heartwood left. They just take the bark and they knew exactly how to use it to help with respiratory, like coughs and colds and things like that. So they worked with it a lot. So it was a really important medicine to the First Nation people. And food.
Yeah. So I'm guessing though, we were talking about the essential oil being in the heartwood. They were
Yeah.
more just utilizing things like the nuts and the bark and different parts of the
Yeah.
tree rather they weren't chopping down the sandalwood trees, I'm assuming.
No, they weren't. They
No.
definitely weren't chopping them down. They were such an important part. Look, there are other trees within Australia, and obviously there's some of them that we will discuss over the time that we're together that they were specifically used to make their huts or their tools with. But these were actually used for their medicine and for their nutrients, and that was a really big important thing because their nutrients was something that was everybody needs protein, everybody needs certain things, and you're getting protein from the nuts and things like that. So yeah, very important tree to them.
Amazing. Now, the fate of sandalwood kind of changed about 200 years ago when European settlers first came to Australia. What happened then with sandalwood as they started to discover, oh, hold on, there's an essential oil in here?
Well, it didn't happen straight away. That's the thing, Adam. The biggest thing is, first of all, they would be down in the sawmills, right? So when the first white settlers came to Australia, they would take the sawmills, and of course, the First Nation people would be working, and some of them would be labouring in the sawmills. And so with the sawmills, lots and lots of lots of our sandalwood would go out, and it would be supplying things like India and China and all sorts of different countries. And they would utilize that wood a lot, as well as use it to create things like incense and stuff like that. So a lot of it was shipped away. The white settlers didn't really use it anything more than build homes and use it for firewood, which was a really, really sad thing. But there was a particular group that got together around about 1844, and I've written down here, so excuse me looking down, but the dates I keep forgetting. I'm not so good with the dates, but I'm writing them here. But they actually would establish that sandalwood work within the Chinese area, and they actually would start logging and sending it out. So again, I've given you a nice little picture here, and this is the ship SS Champion, and this is what the white settlers traders would do. And you could see the sandalwood on the side there. I mean, that's like in abundance, isn't it? I mean, that is just chopping tree left, right, and centre. Now, remember, this is not a farming thing. This was actually just taken straight off the native areas. And it wouldn't really be until, this exporting continued, but it wouldn't really be until in the later parts of, say, around about the 1900s, where a company called Palmer would actually come in and actually produce the essential oil. So once
Okay.
they started to do that, it was really produced with the Boronia, Australian Boronia from Western Australia as well. And that was actually used as fixatives in perfumery. So that's what they first began with. And then it became such a good industry that they were actually selling off the essential oils, and that was going into, a lot of the Asian countries where they would use things. And so it was a big, big business, but not such a big business for Australia because, we weren't using the essential oils. The other countries were using everything. But when the war hit, then the oil really wasn't worth anything to them. Not really. But yet they used it. They did use the oil in the First and Second World War, which I found really totally amazing in the years when I would profile certain essential oils for the research. I found that they would actually administer this as an antibiotic
Wow.
because, there were no antibiotics. And so it held its own in that early 19th century. It actually held itself quite well. Yes, they still used it, the timber logging, and that was really big. So it became big money industry. And I think they called it mountain timber or something when they called it its new name. But anyway, at the end of the day, we started to look like coming into those 50s. And it was really the 50s when we saw the big change and the downfall of the sandalwood oil, because pharmaceutical drugs started to come in. And once the synthetics started to come in, then obviously we're looking at things like penicillin. They weren't looking at going to the oils and using them then, but they were a very, very powerful thing back then and a very important part of actually, the soldiers' survival. So
Yeah, wow.
yeah, it's kind of a lot more history, but of course we haven't got all day to talk history as well. We've got to talk
No.
about other things too.
So you mentioned a little bit about quality of the essential oil. Sandalwood now is a more expensive oil. If you're buying $10 sandalwood, you probably want to question the quality of it. There are other trees out there. Sometimes amorous is used. Sometimes
Yeah,
Buddhawood.
yeah.
Sometimes Nowwood from Hawaii is used as a substitute. You've got to be really careful when you're getting your sandalwood that you are getting a quality one, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. And I suppose, Adam, when we speak about that, it's very hard for me to continually to repeat it, but it is really, really important to know your supplier. And
Mm.
I thought a little bit more along these lines. How else? Look at the labeling, look at the company, look at where and where it's coming from, because you'll always get somebody who might be a bit shady. You may get that. So you've just got to be very aware of where you're going. And don't hesitate. Don't hesitate to ask for their speculations or the specs that they have, to give you a reading of them. Because then I'm not saying you have to understand every sense of chemistry, but if there's no xanthalum in it or xanthol or any of these phosphols in them, then it's not really a sandalwood. So, you are able to ask these questions to these companies. And these
Yeah,
companies
very
should
much.
be able to supply it. And if they can't supply, sometimes you've got to say to yourself, well, we need to go to the bigger source part of them. And if you can go to them and get the answers, then you know that you're getting the right oil. You just have to be very, very careful, because there are, what do you want to call it? I don't want to say small town people, but there are little companies often that produce it, and they may produce it in the all about wrong way, or they may be producing not real sandalwood. Maybe they're taking it from certain areas which give you that really woody effect, but it's not the exact plant. There's
Yeah.
plants out there that do have that smell. So yeah, be careful. Be very careful of that.
So let's dive into the essential oil of Australian sandalwood. How do you, as an aromatherapist, tend to use it the most, or when do you reach for Australian sandalwood?
Mm. You know, I suppose sandal would have to be one of my more popular oils that I use. And of course, when I'm developing prescriptions, which, it may be a prescriptive topical blend for an inflammatory problem, or it may even be for infection or something like that. Without a doubt, I will always go in and make sure that I'm working with the sandalwood. So sandalwood is probably one of my, which I have to say is very difficult because it's such an expensive oil these days. But, it is one of my go-for oils. And I think that it's a very important oil also for people to have. I just think we need to treasure it. I think we need to treat it with respect and again with sustainability. I also like to use it in my perfumery because I do some wonderful Australian perfumery workshops as well. And I like to be able to really work with the sandalwood. But you have to look at how you're going to work with it. Just, again, don't overdo it because we don't want to see this absolutely amazing oil get to a point where we can't afford it or we can't use it anymore, which is, something we don't want to happen. I mean, yes, we could turn to the albium and we could also get the lentulum from here in Queensland. But again, these are not all exactly in abundance either. So, we do need to be really looking at what we're doing with the oil. So I think all of us should treasure it very kindly.
Yeah, very much so. So is it mainly an oil that you would use for skin issues?
Okay, so I'll just talk a little bit of chemistry. I don't want to be the chemist teacher here because I'm not. But, for instance, you'd want to look at the breakdown. So if I'm going to be working with any oil for any reason and I was formulating a prescription, I would very, very much be looking at the chemistry behind it because I would really want to see what it's going to be doing for me. And am I going to get that outcome that I'm looking for to treat that particular ailment? So with your sandalwood, for instance, we've got things like the farnesol that's in there, and that content is really good for its antibacterial process. So I would look at the level of how much was in that particular essential oil on those speculation sheets. I'd also be looking at the alpha bisabolol and the centolines because these are like our anti-inflammatories, and they're really important because this is an amazing anti-inflammatory oil. Again, here I'd say it's going to be used well and truly with things like wounds, skin wounds, and things like that. So, of course, we can't go past the centol that's actually in that itself. So, that particular area of it is what we would look at for that even anxiety or that stress level or things like that. It has such a wonderful, wonderful calming effect. They talk about frankincense being the utmost oil for meditation and whatever. But I'm sorry to say, but I think this guy's just as important. It helps with your breathing. The First Nation people knew that it helped from the breathing, and so they stripped the bark from the tree and they used it for respiratory. But if you use this in that way, you also have that wonderful feeling of being able to relax that mode of breathing. It's absolutely beautiful if you use it in the right way.
So if someone's got a bottle of sandalwood at home, apart from treasuring it and not splashing it around everywhere, how would you recommend they use it the most to get the most out of it? And
I reckon they should just pop it in the post and send it back to me. That's a good thing to do. And I don't mind how many bottles, because the wonderful thing about our sandalwood is it matures with age. And I would like to share this really quickly with you. Many years ago, I had a gentleman I brought to Australia. His name was Alec Lawless. And Alex, he was part of the perfumery industry. And Julia Lawless's ex-husband, actually, he was a lovely man, really lovely man, but he was a real perfumist. And I have a bottle of, I actually do have an absolutely beautiful bottle of sandalwood, which still has the old cork inside of it and sealed. And I would have said, I can't put a date on it, but I would have said back then, even when he saw it, he said that it would have been First World War. And he said that oil itself, he would be looking at that time anything back then around $500 to $600 just for that bottle. Just
wow.
stage. And it wasn't even full.
Yeah.
So biggest thing is make sure that when you do use your sandalwood, cap it straight away. Just try not to let that oxygen get in there. We don't want it to oxidize. So the longer you put it on that shelf, don't think that expiry date says you must throw it away, because truly and honestly, if you look after sandalwood, it'll look after you.
And so I'm assuming diffusing it would be beneficial, especially if you do want to kind of calm yourself down.
Yeah,
Good for skincare.
And it's one of these things, Adam, which is really, if you're going into the TGA side of it all, you know, they class this as a non-toxic oil and, you know, and a non-irritant oil. So, you know, even if it was to put, you know, 2 drops, if you're feeling anxious and you're feeling that anxiety and you're feeling overwhelmed and things like that, 2 drops into your palm of your hands and give it a good rub and really inhale it and feel comfort and do your breathing exercises. And let me tell you, that can bring it back down to some sort of balance. You feel a lot better, you know, you really do. So breathing exercises are very important as well. I think we need to learn a little bit more about that as well. But yeah, I would be saying that, yes, they can burn them in their diffusers and all that. I probably would be more likely to hold it on and say, look, I'm going to put it on to maybe a patch, and that way I've got it during the day and I can smell it. Where if I'm diffusing something that's really quite really a treasure, I'd have to diffuse it for a good reason.
Got you. Yeah, that makes sense.
This can be used every day of your life. This could be your buddy. You know, like if you get some little proper little patches. I must show you next time we get. I'll bring some patches and show you, and you can pop that on those patches and give it a good rub, and that will, you know, it'll be absolutely wonderful for you all day. But hence saying that, well, let's do something really quick. We have time for this?
We definitely do. Yeah. Got a bit of a make and take for us today. I'm keen to see it.
Well, to help people who are watching us, this is just like 20 grams here of just an aloe gel. Yep. You know, if you can maybe, I'm not too sure where you may purchase it from. There are companies that you can purchase the aloe gel from. Nothing in it. There's no scent, no nothing in there. So pop that aloe gel in. And I think we've spoken about this last week or the month or whatever it was ago. We were talking about lemon myrtle. So I'm going to actually put 2 drops of lemon myrtle in here. And I'm going to use this as a little thing for mosquito bite. Now, remember, this is high in citral. So this also works really good as one of those little deterrents to those little pesky guys. But because our sandalwood has such a wonderful anti-inflammatory as well as helps with that antibacterial because of those particular chemistries that we talked about, if there is a little open lesion from scratching on those itchy bites, then this is actually going to help with both antibacterial and inflammatory, and it's such an amazing remedy. Now, it is a little bit more than the norm, but I would actually be putting in 4 to 5 drops of this. It is not going to affect your skin. It is not going to be an irritant to the skin. So people do not have to worry. And it'd be nice because, you know, sandalwood is quite viscous, so we're going to sit here for a fair while watching it come out. Actually, come on, be kind to me. Anyway, 4 to 5 drops is really good. 2, here we go. 3, come on, slow poke, you can do it. 3, slowly. You want to chat about something else while we're here? 4, and here we go.
Oh, this is Spencer's killing me.
I know, this is the 5th one. We're right here. Come on, you can do it. Proud of you. Proud of you. Okay, lid on straight away, remember? We don't want that to obtain any oxygen at all if we can. Now, I wouldn't even go past by putting even a drop or 2, like maybe 3 or 4 drops, I'd say, of macadamia oil, straight macadamia oil. Give it a good stir. And generally this will stir up to make like a really, really smooth ointment. Am I showing that okay with you there?
We can see your hand stirring. There we go. Now we can see it. Yep.
Oh, I'll make sure you need to prompt me. Okay, so now this can be just popped into a jar.
Yeah.
And anytime that there's any issues or any inflammatories or any problems with that, just pop it out of the jar, pop it onto your skin, and it doesn't matter. It's not, it's not going to create any issues. Give it a nice rub and it'll settle itself in there and really knock away that issue with those types of mosquito or ant bites or anything like that.
And
Simple.
that in that jar can, if assuming that jar's an airtight jar, would that could last a year or two? Would you
Well,
say?
I don't think it'll last that long because we have that many insects in Australia, but that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Best thing to do is always label anyway. You don't pop anything in any place without a label on it. Just pop down what it is. It's a anti-bite or anti, whatever it is that you're going to call it, and then put a date on it that you made it and cool it off in the fridge. You don't have to put it in the fridge, but it will always maintain that coolness as well. Do you know another thing too? You can actually drop 1 drop of peppermint in there and it'll give that really good final bounce to the ounce. So give it a go.
Nice.
It's a
Yeah,
really simple, easy thing to do, and anyone can do that.
I love that. Some of other uses that just popped into my head very quickly. It's obviously got a beautiful aroma, and one of the worst things we can actually put on our body is commercial colognes and perfumes. Although they claim to be full of plant material, it's normally just a chemical cocktail that really upsets our endocrine system and our hormones. But one thing as a man that I love to wear a lot is just straight sandalwood oil. And not only do I wear it, but allegedly Brad Pitt smells of sandalwood. So
I just want to let you know you don't look like Brad Pitt. Is that what you wanted to ask
no,
me?
I wasn't alluding to that at all, kind of thing. We know Brad Pitt's not as good looking as me, but
Not anymore.
it's a really great one for just men for a natural cologne as well. But I was wondering when you're talking about the anti-inflammatory, would it be good in massage rubs as well for tight and sore muscles?
Of course. But again, as I say, because it is one of our more superior oils and we do have to worry about its sustainability, I, I think that massaging, because it will go a long way, is
Mm,
probably better than jumping into that diffuser. I don't want to say that. I mean, I love it in a diffusing area, but I just worry that it's such a precious oil. I would rather see it in your perfumes. I'd rather see it in your ointments. I'd rather see it used on your body for an amazing, and it's safe to do that. So, you know, pop something else in your diffuser. Use this immediately with your patches. Use it and really utilize it as a good oil for yourself to hold and say, yep, I can actually work with that. Where some of them you can't put to your skin neatly, where this is not a problem. So let's use it fully,
yeah, yeah,
not water
definitely.
it down. Let's
Yeah,
not water it down.
beautiful. Before we wrap up this conversation, is there anything else that you feel that we've missed or that everyone must know about Australian sandalwood?
Mm, smells fabulous. No, look, you know what? I think most people have a really good understanding about sandalwood anyway. And Adam, the biggest thing is just be aware of it, understand that it is an oil which is becoming very hard to get, and we do want to look after it. But whilst you use it directly for yourself. Make it yours and make sure that you look after it. It's a wonderful oil. Make sure you buy it from the right distributors. Make sure you work with it well. And if you're not sure of something, contact someone like yourself and get the information that you need to know and then work with it. Don't waste it.
I love that message. We appreciate when someone cooks us a meal and that takes them, a couple of hours. It takes a sandalwood tree at least 30 years to create that little bottle that you hold in your hand. So treasure that and
Yep.
don't let that time and that effort go in vain. So
And let me say one more thing. Again, if I had the opportunity now and I could afford it, I would make sure that I had ample amount of sandalwood sitting in my home, because I know that it's never going to oxidize off if you treat it well, and it will only mature. And so to me, the more I have in my home, the happier I'll be.
yeah, that's a great message. And one I didn't realize about how it improves over time. And as long as you're getting that lid on all the time so the oxygen's not getting in there, then you don't really have to worry about it going off or, going bad, which is amazing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Debbie, thank you so much for your insights, for your information, for those tips on sandalwood and that little mozzie balm.
Yeah.
I'm going outside now to go get bitten by insects so I can give it a shot.
Well, you enjoy that.
Uh,
Anyway, everybody have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you again soon, Adam.
will do. Thanks a lot, Debbie.
Okay, take care. Bye bye now.